Large cities like Bombay, Bangalore, you have enough good schools. But the moment you start going beyond the metros, the quality dips precipitously. And I come from a small town and I've seen it firsthand. So that's why we wanted to make a difference there, and all our schools were set up in small towns. So in December of 2012, I remember we went and we visited about 18 schools near her village, about 20-kilometer radius. And we realized that even though those schools were calling themselves English medium, high quality CBSE schools, we went pretending as parents looking for admission. We were appalled at the quality of education available there. So I think it was a decision from the heart, and I said, yeah, let's open a school here. So whenever an entrepreneur comes and says, I have given myself 1 year, I'm going to try it out. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to my job or I'll do that. I'm like, please don't start. Because if you have a back door, you cannot be an entrepreneur.
Hello and welcome to Mint. This is our new show on entrepreneurship, where we speak to founders to learn more about why they started up and how did they take the leap to set up their own businesses. Today we have with us Sumeet Mehta, the co-founder of Lead. Sumeet's journey has also been pretty interesting. He, after engineering, he went to IIM and he did stints in various MNCs. He also started schools across Maharashtra at various talukas before setting up Lead. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your journey, because you're the first entrepreneur from your family.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Actually, entrepreneurship is like a very distant thing for our family, because most of people in our family are teachers. My parents were teachers. My brother and bhabhi still are teachers. I grew up in a small town, and I think my reason for doing what I'm doing today is because when I finished my first 16 to 18 years of education and went to my engineering college, I realized the big gap between small towns in India and large cities. And I realized that children who grow up in small towns are at a disadvantage. They don't have the awareness, they don't have access, and they don't have exposure. So at that point, it seemed like world is unfair. But, I did my engineering, like you said, MBA, then went to PNG. This thought was always at the back of my mind that, at some point I have to go back and do something in education for kids in small towns. So I think that's really the genesis. And after I had done my stripes in PNG, I wanted to come back to India. So I did that in 2007. And since then, I've been working in education.
Tell us about this, idea of starting up in schools, like working for children in small town. What was the driver behind that?
It's an interesting story. So in fact, when I came back to India, I first started teaching MBA students because I thought I've done marketing for the last 8 years. This would be easy. And I remember in one of my classrooms, I realized that when those students were presenting their case study, I realized that a lot of the thinking foundation is built in foundational layers in school, and working with the kids in MBA college was already too late. So I decided that if I have to make an impact in education, it has to be K-12. I think this is 2005 when the penny dropped for me. So that made it clear to me that if I want to make an impact in education, it has to be K-12.
And how did you start? Did you start with one school? Where did you start?
So that's another story. I actually packed my bags, me and Smita, my co-founder and my life partner. We were actually expecting our first kid in Singapore. So we said, okay, let's pack all the changes in life and do it in one go. So we decided to move back to India, and I wanted to start up. Then I met Subhash Chandra, and then through a twist of fate, ended up running Z-Learn for 5 years from 2008 to about end of 12. And then I realized that if I have to really make a difference, I should first start by running schools in villages and small towns. My first school began with 14 students in a village near Ahmedabad in Gujarat. And then we opened 4 more schools in Maharashtra in small taluka areas. Because, I think in large cities like Bombay, Bangalore, you have enough good schools. But the moment you start going beyond the metros, the quality dips precipitously. And I come from a small town and I've seen it firsthand. So that's why we wanted to make a difference there, and all our schools were set up in small towns.
How did you identify Ahmedabad, and what was the capital required? What was the process actually?
Actually, in hindsight, you realize all of it is serendipity. So in near Ahmedabad, there was a friend who had been telling me when I was at Zeeland to set up a school, and I was telling her that you can't afford a high fee school in your village, because at Zeeland we were catering to upper middle class. The day I left Z, she called me and said, now you've left, now there is no reason, why don't we set up a school in our village? So in December of 2012, I remember we went and we visited about 18 schools near her village, about 20-kilometer radius. And we realized that even though those schools were calling themselves English medium, high quality CBSE schools, we went pretending as parents looking for admission. We were appalled at the quality of education available there. So I think it was a decision from the heart, and I said, yeah, let's open a school here. And in fact, one of my professors of IIM Ahmedabad gave us the furniture of my first classroom. So that's how the first school came up in Gujarat. And then because we were based in Bombay, we were looking at schools in the vicinity of Pune and Bombay in small towns. So that's how Mangaon, Kurduwadi, Karmala, Akkalkot came up, and we set up schools there.
So these first five schools, what kind of capital went in to set them up? This was your own money, clearly.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't a lot. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money,
so
but
you just required a building and
land, building, and in 2-3 schools, we actually took the land and building on long-term lease. So if you ask me, I think we had an accumulated capital of about 1.5 crore.
Okay.
So we bought land with that and set up the first floor of the first building, and then gave the initial deposit all from that money. And yeah, thankfully it worked out.
Was there a business plan at that point?
No, I think there was an intention that we wanted to make a difference. And I had worked in education enough to know that if you run a good school, after the first 3-4 years, it works out, because parents want good education. They're willing to pay for it. You just have to ensure you're providing quality. So after the first 300-400 students, when the school reaches that limit, then it's a perpetuity. So that we were fairly confident of. Our first ask was to ensure that in these small towns, the big problem is you don't get good teachers. So we had to invest a lot in building the local capability of teachers. Once that was done, then it was a solved problem.
And were you also teaching?
I was, yeah. I've actually taught almost all grades from pre-primary all the way to grade 8.
Yeah.
But math and science is what I have taught. Smita has taught English and social.
Right. Give us some sense of how that changed what LEAD would become. Because initially your plan was to set up schools everywhere.
Yeah.
So how many years did this go on for, and what were the lessons from that initial foray?
It's funny. When we began and when we moved back to India, I was clear that we're going to commit our life to education, and we want to make a large size impact, because both me and Smita, leaving everything and committing ourselves to education would be worth it if we are able to reach a sizable number of students and make a difference in their life. So that was very clear. The path wasn't clear. The intention was very clear. But as someone says that, find purpose, means will follow. So we set up these 5 schools, and they were working well. I remember one day me and Smita were walking and she said that, what after these 5 schools, like, are we going to open more schools? And I said, yeah, if we continue opening more schools in our lifetime, we'll have 30, 40, maybe 50, right? India has 1.5 million schools. So opening our own schools doesn't seem to be the right thing. Can we improve the quality of already existing schools? And there's a bit of a cheat here, because at the same time, there was another nearby school who had reached out to us and said that, we have heard good things about you. Jo aap apne school mein kar rahe ho, can be used in your school, in our school. So that gave us an idea that maybe the system of learning that we have built, and because we had higher exposure, we had built a lot of tech into that. Maybe that system can actually go to other schools and make a difference. So that was the idea back in 2017. So we said, okay, why don't we take this to a few schools and see if it catches. So our first year's intention was that 12 to 15 schools, let's go and see what happens. We got 30 schools interested. So we're like, wow, there is something here. Clearly there is a need for like an integrated system. It's like a plug and play. You put it in your school and learning outcomes improve. So since then it was 30, then 150, then 600, and now we're at 3000. So it just kind of caught fire after that. Yeah.
And what areas do you cover now?
See, now we are almost present everywhere in India. In fact, somebody was telling me that we have a partner school near the line of control in Kashmir. And then we have a partner school very close to the Burma border. Like that expanded. But in the beginning, we were very clear that our focus is on small towns. So today also about 80% of our partner schools are in tier 3, tier 4 towns.
And, especially going back to the first 5 schools that you started, that went on for a year?
They still run. I mean, now we have more than 2,000 students in those 4 schools. In fact, we had our CBSE results come out, and about 23% of those students in those 4 schools, in those talukas, have scored more than 90%. So, I think making those kind of transformational changes is really very fulfilling.
How did you crack the pricing power? Because, you mentioned earlier that in tier 2, tier 3, pricing would be a key. All the parents want to pay.
Yeah.
There is a limit that you cannot charge beyond.
Actually, it's funny. Today, like an average school, a parent would be paying 25,000 annual fee and about 5,000, which is the student kit. If they pay incremental 100 rupees per month, they're able to afford our system. So it's that affordable. We have ensured that our solution is something which works at scale. So a lot of the R&D cost is defrayed over a large number of schools, and we've been able to keep the price affordable. And in those 100 rupees incremental per month, we are able to give them books, technology, student app, all the hardware required in the books, and all the support and training for the teachers. So everything in that price. It requires a lot of planning and being very cost conscious, but if we have to achieve scale, I think it was very important to keep the price affordable.
And how many tier 2 towns do you operate in now?
I think we must have reached more than 450 now.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that you wanted to create like mass impact. So what is the TAM that you're thinking of, like for an Indian market?
I think in India, the TAM is going to outlast our lifetime, definitely. But in the next 5 years, if you ask me, we will get to about 25 million students. India has 270 million students in total. Out of them, 130 million go to private schools. So out of those 130, I think we'll get to about 20%, which is 25 million.
Let's go back to, your switch from schools to curriculum. At that point, how much time did you take to build the curriculum? Can you walk us through, that switch? Was that when you started raising capital as well? Yeah,
so I think it's interesting. I remember somebody told me back in 2012, it's a very short term, but he said, nail it before you scale it. And a lot of our system actually is built in our own schools. So our English curriculum, which is ELGA, our school integrated system, our school dashboard, student app, everything was built for our teachers and our students. So before we sold it to anyone, it was tested, proven, and shown results in our own schools. Of course, it was at a different scale. So a lot of our own money actually went in building the what you can now call an MVP of the product. And then I think when we wanted to scale, the largest investment was in CAC because you have to reach out to schools and give them a demo and persuade them. So that was when we raised our first round back in 2017.
Right, and this was after you had hit like about 600 schools, you mentioned.
No, actually, we were running our 5 schools, and then when we decided to go and offer our services to other schools, that's when we raised our first seed round with Elevar.
And how was that experience? When did you realize that, okay, now you need to raise capital? How did you go about the process?
Actually, we didn't have any money of our own. So right. I don't think it was a very, we had a choice. If we had to scale, we needed to raise money. Otherwise, we could have just run those 5 schools. And I think one advantage of having worked for a decent period of time was that we were clear on who we wanted to partner with us and who we didn't. So we in fact reached out to, I think, 5 funds, and most of them were impact VCs at that time. And I remember when we spoke to those funds, they were very surprised that we had a criteria of selection, like, this is who we want and this is who we don't want, which I don't think happens very often. But actually it works because, raising money in my mind is like a marriage. You got to build that company together. So if you don't like spending time with each other, it's going to be a very tough journey. So it was important that they knew who they wanted and we knew who we wanted. And, with Elivar, the marriage has been amazing. They have been great partners. So I think the initial round of investment was easy because they could see that we had operating experience, we had our heart in the right place, and we were committed to making it work. And we already had a proof of concept in our own schools. So I'm assuming the decision was easy for Elivar. For us, I think we loved their focus on underserved communities. They had done a lot of work on microfinance, so they knew these communities. So we thought, we could learn something from them.
What was the initial plan? When you reached out to VCs, what did you pitch them? What was there in your pitch deck exactly?
I'll tell you a funny story. Last month I was with Elivar and they showed me the pitch deck that we had made at the time of seed financing, which is 2017. And in that pitch deck, it says we will reach 3,000 schools in 2025. We are at 3,000 schools and it's 2024. And they were like, it's very rare that like at the seed stage, what you set as a goal or as an ambition, you're able to achieve. Now, at that point, it's like, you're throwing an arrow out in the future, not knowing where it lands. But funnily enough, it has kind of played out for us because what we looked at was that, what scale of impact will give us joy and fulfillment that these many years of putting effort was worth it. It was from that approach that we build our goals for the future. And thankfully, it's kind of played out.
Since then, the edtech ecosystem has kind of become more established. What are your thoughts on your place within the edtech ecosystem?
I think you're being generous when you're saying it's become established. It is. It is in a turmoil. Let's be honest about it. I think the tragedy of edtech is that it gets painted with a brush where edtech is seen as synonymous with tuitions and test prep. But edtech is a lot more, right? Edtech is about school edtech, which is where we work on. Edtech is also about upskilling. It's about college admissions abroad. And if you expand the definition of edtech, then there are some sectors which are not working as well. And not surprising because they build their business models and their valuations during a time which was abnormal, which was COVID, right? Where everybody was stuck at home and people thought schools are going to shut down. But now that we are back in a normal, then any commonsensical approach towards edtech will tell us that everybody goes to school. They spend 8 hours in a school and schools are not run really well in India. So we really need interventions there. College admissions is a challenge. And then lifelong learning is a challenge. And if we focus on these three things, then you can get edtech which creates impact and which can actually make money for investors. All the other fancy things, I think, can be like waves. So my view on edtech is if you focus on creating impact, which is learning outcomes, then I think everything else goes well. I keep saying Saraswati has to happen before Lakshmi, right? If you focus on Saraswati, Lakshmi will follow. But if you just go straight to Lakshmi, then neither will happen. So I think if you get your, first you get your mind and heart space right, then you have your impact model right, then you have your business model right, then I think we're fine.
Tell us a little bit about, how you ended up in PNG. You are from Pathankot, the journey from Pathankot to Singapore, essentially.
Okay, I think till IIM Ahmedabad, it was about just getting a good living because I come from a middle class, lower middle class family, and growing up it was about go to a good college, get a good job and earn a living. So single-mindedly just did that, engineering, MBA. In MBA, I was not very interested in finance and strategy and stuff. I was very interested in marketing. So PNG and Levers were the two companies I got into PNG and then moved to Singapore. Singapore again was a great place because it was my first time living outside of India. But a funny thing is, when you live out of your own country, you're able to look at your country from a very different perspective. Right? Because when you are inside it, you don't see all the challenges and relief. But when you're outside it, you're able to see that here I'm living in Singapore, 5 hours away. This country is top 5 in PISA. My country is 71 out of 72 in PISA. Why should that be? So I think the urge to do something actually grew a lot more because I was out of India.
And also for middle class families, when you have a salaried job, it's kind of hard to, it's like a prison, some people say, where you are so dependent on the salary that it's hard to let that go. And then, and you did that when your wife was expecting. So take us through that thinking.
You've seen the movie Tamasha?
I don't think so.
You should watch it. I think my journey is quite similar. Actually, when I decided to move back from Singapore to India, my father actually called Smita and said, are you okay with this? This guy has gone mad. Why are you doing it? But I think I've learned that if you listen to your heart, then you don't go wrong. It wasn't clear at that time. Everybody, my friends, my family said that this is the worst thing you're doing. This is such a wrong decision. Why are you doing it? We had the stereotypical NRI life. Convertible, dinks, and Singapore is a comfortable place to stay. But I think if you're not happy in your heart about the work that you're doing, about the meaning that you're generating from your life, then it's not worth it. And I was lucky. I read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 2003. So I got the idea of financial freedom. So I knew that if we hit this mark, and we were earning in dollars, so I think converted in rupees, it's quite good. So if we hit this mark, then I should leave and do what I want to do and not worry about the month-end salary. So I think some of these things kind of helped, and I've never been a person who listens to others. So I think that also helped.
Probably be a key trait for a founder.
I think so, yeah, because you have to listen to so many naysayers and still hold on to your belief. It isn't easy, but I think if you I have realized if you listen to your heart, do what you love, I don't think you go wrong very often in life.
How long did it take you to build that comfort with money for you to be able to take that leap? I'm asking because there may be a lot of viewers who are probably at that juncture and they want to sort of understand how long of a runway that they should keep for themselves.
It's interesting. I think the idea of a water level, the lower you keep it in your life, the more freedom you have. So a lot of people get caught up in a big house, a big car, fancy meals and stuff, and then your water level is very high. So it's very high then to escape it. Maybe it is my middle class upbringing that I've kept the water level low in my life. Simple house, simple car, no fancy needs. I've just focused on kids' education and that's about it. So because the water level is so low, there is a lot of freedom to do what you want, because I think given the education we've had, 1 or 2 lakhs a month you can easily earn just by a simple consulting assignment. So if you keep your needs low, then your freedom is very high. So it depends on what you want to prioritize. Some people want to prioritize lifestyle and then they forsake freedom. Some people want to prioritize freedom and they can make do with less. I think I was of the second category.
Yeah, the freedom. I mean, you mentioned Z-Learn and you managed to take that company public as well. Is that the end goal for Lead with your experience as well?
Yeah. See, I think end goal, the way I think about Lead is there are 2 end goals. Right? One is the purpose for which Lead was set up. Lead was not set up as an investment vehicle. Lead was set up with the intent of improving educational outcomes in the country. My sense is that there is no end goal because, like I said, there are 270 million kids. We are barely reaching 5 million today. We'll reach 25 million in 5 years. So that is going to outlive us. The other is our responsibility to our shareholders. And I think from that standpoint, going public would be a natural outcome so that everybody who's backed us and invested us, get their return, and we basically fulfill that responsibility in addition to fulfilling our responsibility towards our students. So I compartmentalize that because that ensures that we don't get confused, because they are two very different goals that we are pursuing.
I want to move now to talk about the key traits that founders should have, and given your experience, perhaps you can help new founders with their journey. So, firstly, did the fact that you ran Z-Learn for so long, you took it public, did that, I'm guessing it would have helped you in setting up your own business and getting investor backing. So is that kind of pedigree very important?
Okay, I think there isn't a cookie cutter solution to become an entrepreneur. I think everybody has a different path, but there are some common traits that I have seen. One, like you rightly said in the beginning of our conversation, that I think independent thinking and listening to your heart are very important, because most entrepreneurial journeys end up in failure. Most. Very few are able to survive. And those who are able to survive because they are able to overcome a lot of naysayers, a lot of obstacles, and a lot of doubts. So therefore, just independent thinking, belief in yourself, listening to your heart, persistence, those are basics. I have never seen an entrepreneur who doesn't have this and is still able to succeed. Beyond that, I think that the additional thing is that whichever category, segment you are in, whichever problem you are trying to solve, if you don't care deeply about that problem, you're not going to be able to persist through all the challenges that will come in your way. I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they say that I'm giving myself 9 months, I'm giving myself 1 year. I'm like, if you want to start with a time limit, don't start. Because you don't know. I think it will be much better to say, I really care about this problem, I'll do whatever it takes to overcome it. Now, whether that happens in 6 months or 6 years, I think destiny will tell you, because a lot of things are outside of our circle of influence. So whenever an entrepreneur comes and says, I have given myself 1 year, I'm going to try it out. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to my job or I'll do that. I'm like, please don't start. Because if you have a back door, you cannot be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs who have plan B in the beginning seldom succeed. Entrepreneurs who say, I'm all in, then they do whatever it takes to make it work. Now, it is counterintuitive that, why should you not have a plan B? But psychologically, our brain works that when the going gets tough, if there is a back door, your brain will move you towards the back door. But if there is no back door, it will find out ways to either drill a hole or find a window or find a door. But that's how our brain works. So we should use our brain to our advantage by going all in. It's like the Spartans, right? They would burn the bridge when they would attack. But there's no going back. Entrepreneurship is like that.
What kind of advice would you give founders who find themselves in a difficult situation? How do you navigate it? What are the 2-3 things that they can do to control the situation?
See, unless it is fatal, have fun with it. Because, if you are an entrepreneur, you are basically signing up that every day you'll be hit with problems and your job is to solve them, because that is what an entrepreneur does. Everybody in the organization, whatever problem is unsolvable, escalates up to the founder. That's your job, right? So if you don't love solving problems, if you don't love answering challenges, then you should not be an entrepreneur. So unless it is fatal, like, the company is going to shut down and this, you should have fun with problems. Like, just have fun solving problems. If it is fatal, I think, God forbid, it should not come to a founder. But if it is fatal, then I think you have to look at alternatives. That's where pivots are beneficial. That's where partnerships are beneficial. So that's where you've got to rely on your ingenuity. But I don't think you can wish away problems or challenges. That's like the lifeblood of an entrepreneur.
Right. Sumeet, we have like a couple of quick rapid fire questions for you. Is it important to have an MBA to be a founder?
No. In my case, it helped, but I don't think it is mandatory.
How do you, assess challenges? Like, in a sense, MBA sort of gives you a little bit of a grounding, right? Like a lot of investors prefer founders.
It does. I think MBA, the way it has helped me is you are able to do first principles thinking. You have some frameworks to look at problems. But yeah, I think, but that can be developed outside of an MBA also. The biggest advantage of an MBA from a good college is the network that you have, people who you can fall back upon if you need help. So that I think is priceless.
Do you invest in startups?
Very few. The biggest startup I invested is in Lead.
Okay. But what would you like to invest in? What are the areas that you think if you were an investor you would like to invest in?
See, in addition to education and health, the biggest problem the world is facing is climate. So I actually adopt a very problem-focused approach that what are the big problems to solve? Because if you're solving big problems, then you have the chance to create big businesses. So something in education, health or climate is what I would be interested in.
How would you define success today?
Commercially, I would say that if I'm investing, then whatever problem you are trying to solve, there should be evidence that you are solving it, because if there is evidence, then you have the chance to become big. So in my mind, impact and commercial success are not two different things. In my mind, creating impact is a way to achieve commercial success, because in the long term, if you are doing this, then this happens. Like I said, if Saraswati happens, Lakshmi happens. So I'm very focused on if you are promising that you will have improved health outcomes, are you really delivering it? If you are basically promising that you will reduce carbon footprint, are you doing it? Because if you do what you promise, then there is a chance that you will have commercial success. So that's my rough thesis on looking at things.
Finally, what is the one advice that you would give founders? It's been like a lot of advice, but what is the one thing you would want to leave with founders?
Okay, I think don't do it unless you can't sleep because you're not doing it, because it is not easy. Becoming a founder or an entrepreneur is like 24/7. So it looks sexy and glamour from outside, but it's only fun if you really, really want to do it, and you will have like a heartache or a stomachache if you don't do it. Only then do it. Otherwise, don't do it just because everyone is doing it. It is the trend. It is the latest thing. Those are wrong reasons to do entrepreneurship.
We'll end it there. Thank you so much,
All right.
Sumeet. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.